morning. I'm talking about a beautiful subject this morning, one that is very deep into the Agni Yoga teaching and may take a little while to understand, so I'll try to make it clear this morning. But it's so beautiful. It is so beautiful. If you can imagine what it is like to sit down in your office and put together a lecture like this, a talk like this, it's such an honor. And it's stabilizing, it brings balance, it brings peace and joy and health and freedom. We were talking about this in our meditation this morning. It is so otherworldly that your life, you take your life and reassess your life and recognize the importance life is, not the superficial elements or aspects of life, but how truly significant it is and what the purpose of life is all about. Just by thinking about Agni Yoga and putting the words of the teachings together and realizing what a gift we have been given to find such teaching. So let me begin. The lion of the desert. Isn't that an interesting statement? The lion of the desert is a degree of attainment of the Agni Yogi. This is why it's important, to a degree, it's important to recognize and understand that it is a degree. It's not a metaphor or it's not a symbol. It is a degree of attainment of the Agni Yogi. However, first is the fiery degree of the lamp of the desert. The lamp of the desert is determined by your open and active centers. So this is some food for thought. What does it mean to have an open center? And then what does it mean to have an active center? They seem to be two separate elements, an open center and an active center. So to be a lamp of the desert is determined by our open and active centers. This attainment is then followed by the achievement of the lion of the desert. This level of spiritual advancement indicates above all absolute fearlessness. Absolute fearlessness. So you see, it's very specific about what it means to be the lamp of the desert and the lion of the desert. It's not abstract. So again, the lamp of the desert means that you have open and active centers, and to become a lion of the desert means you are absolutely fearless. In the book Agni Yoga, about the lamp of the desert, it says one should know, and I'm enhancing this a little bit, one should know that having your centers open enables you to reduce the imperfection of your surrounding. One should know that having your centers open enables you to reduce the imperfections in your surroundings. It brings not only the development of sensitivity, so now we have reducing the imperfection of our surroundings, but also development of sensitivity. And this is something that Helena Rourke talked about to her beginning students, about the importance of developing one's sensitivity. 100 years ago, developing your sensitivity was something different than it is in the year 2021. A lot has transpired in these past 100 years. So developing sensitivity, I think, is becoming increasingly more challenging than it was 100 years ago, because the mind is more developed today than it was 100 years ago. The concrete mind. We have filled that concrete mind up with so much intellectual debris that it's like become, our thinking has become so cemented and rooted in our opinions and prejudices and culture that it seems to obscure the development of sensitivity. But if we want to be a lamp in the desert, then we must not only develop our sensitivity, but also the offerings of our own forces for the improvement of our surroundings. This degree of openness of the centers is called the lamp of the desert. After this, then follows the lion of the desert. The degree of lion of the desert specifically permits, listen, this is so powerful, it permits the fulfillment of your thoughts. That's very powerful. The degree of the lion of the desert specifically permits the fulfillment of your thoughts. The degree of lion of the desert knows no offense, for who could offend? In other words, who could hurt and wound and injure others? The great heart can contain all. The one who has attained the stage of the lion of the desert demonstrates the freeing of themselves from earth and earthly possessions. Do you want me to repeat this? The one who has attained the stage of the lion of the desert demonstrates the freeing of themselves. Now, you've got to think about this. What does it mean? The freeing of themselves from earth. What does it mean to free ourselves from earth and earthly possessions? This achievement is required for an understanding of the spheres or field of consciousness as separate. When the Master says this achievement is required for an understanding of the spheres as separate, it means separate from the earthly sphere. See, you got to think with this a little bit. I know this is a fairly advanced talk, but we can handle this. All we have to do is really think in the light of the higher mind. Let intuition come in. Let straight knowledge help you. Instead of me regurgitating something that you know every Sunday. See, this is new. So, this achievement is required for an understanding of this comment. The spheres are separate from the earthly sphere. For example, when we think of spheres of consciousness, our thoughts go to the higher ashram, the light of the ashram, the sphere of the ashram. The ashram is a sphere of consciousness. Okay, the ashram, this higher ashram, we're an outpost of the higher ashram, but we need to focus on the higher to understand the lower. So this higher ashram is a sphere of consciousness to which the Agni Yoga student can send and receive. Send and receive. An ashram is where a sphere of consciousness is formed. It is not a location, but a sphere of light and knowledge and other things. When you are initiated into an ashram, you will gradually be put in touch with the directives of planetary, solar, galactic purpose, plan, and light. The one traveling the path of knowledge walks like the lion of the desert. Who will respond to the roar of a lion? Only another lion, free of fear. We see in a spiritual leader the dignity, the humility of an initiate. We see the Agni Yogi as a lion of the desert. So what does it mean to be a lion of the desert? The lion of the desert has power and energy and influence. The Agni Yogi has achieved this level as a protector, an example of steadiness and endurance and energy. The yogi is a lion because they embody great principles. They embody great principles. So then you ask yourself, if you are a lamp in the desert, if you are a lion in the desert, what is your life based, what principles is your life based on? What are those principles? In the Agni Yoga teachings, we talk about pillars. There are so many pillars in the teaching of Agni Yoga. These pillars become the principles upon which we live our life. The lion of the desert is an Agni Yogi. An Agni Yogi is one whose consciousness functions in the fires of the higher mind and higher. He or she is one whose consciousness is in a realm where they live for other people. This is extraordinary. To live for other people, where they can change deserts into gardens. Think of the title, Leaves of Moria's Garden. Think of the very first book that was written and published in the Agni Yoga series is The Call. The Leaves of Moria's Garden, the call. What does the call mean? Have we been called to this path of life? Lions of the desert are light bearers. They bring illumination into darkness. They bring new ideas into the minds of humanity, into the fields of human endeavor, into such fields that we're so familiar with: politics, education, art and music, philosophy, psychology, religion, and economics. We need more disciples in the field of economics. They are true leaders. Lions of the desert are true leaders, spiritual warriors, warriors of spirit. Helena Rourke reminds us that, quote, in all religious teachings, the people who start upon the spiritual path are called warriors. All bodhisattvas and even the most sacred images of Buddha have in their hands or by them a sword as an imperceptible and absolute attribute. The sword, the warrior of spirit. Such spiritual warriors are increasingly attacked. Of course they are. Increasingly attacked by what? Betrayal, malice, and slander, but they never give up. This means their consciousness is so firmly rooted in the supermundane that no attack can short-circuit their contact with the great Lord and with hierarchy. But the path to reaching that stage of consciousness is filled with challenge, filled with tests, filled with trials, filled with obstacles. We are told that all servants of humanity must be tested. Servants, that's the key word. All servants of humanity must be tested. Yet these are challenges, situations, and conditions that strengthens us along the way. These tests are designed as preparation to create a readiness for greater creative activity and responsibilities. These are tests that prepare us to be successful warriors of spirit. What's important here to remind yourself, keep in mind that we're not talking, the teaching is not talking specifically to only one incarnation, but life after life after life after life. So, many lives simply seem to be filled with challenge and tests and trials. And when you're living that life, you think it's an unending life. You don't recognize it's a blip in the whole string of your many incarnations. And it's an important blip. So, this is why we want to develop in our children this sense of what it means to be a warrior of the spirit. That no matter what life brings them, no matter the challenge, no matter the test, no matter the trials, no matter the obstacles, they're going somewhere. These challenges, these tests, these trials are purposeful to the direction their life is taking them as a soul. See, from this life to the next, to the next, to the next. And this is why we want to graduate at the end of each life, so we don't have to come back to first grade and start all over again. These challenges strengthen us along the way. The tests are designed, like I said, as preparation to create a readiness for greater creativity and responsibility. MM reminds us of the support of the hierarchy and the teacher by saying this: joy is easily attained if at each moment you feel devotion to us. Satisfaction is within reach of those disciples who value the clouds, realizing that without clouds the sun would scorch. Yet the teacher can act where his hand is not tied. In other words, do not obscure the creativity, the intuition, the vision of the teacher by earthly reasoning. For example, often a teacher is bound by the opinions of a board of directors or the short-sightedness of those around them, or by those who hold the purse strings and other situations. It is important that we do not obscure the vision of the teacher by earthly reasoning. This is why it is important for those who surround the teacher to be sensitive to direct knowledge and the light of pure reason. Such sensitivity brings protection and success. We are in a new era of responsibility. A new era of responsibility The greatest leaders have the greatest sense of responsibility. Isn't this interesting? When it comes time for you to vote for your national leader, president, whomever is going to lead your country, is he or she the one that has and accepts has the greatest sense of responsibility? Then that's the one you vote for. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with those purse strings. See, it's the new era of responsibility. The greatest leaders have the greatest sense of responsibility. Their sense of responsibility is the cause of all the great things they accomplish. Really think about this, because this is not the way the common person thinks. So I'm going to repeat it. The greatest leaders have the greatest sense of responsibility. Their sense of responsibility is the cause of all the great things they accomplish. Actually, responsibility is not given to us. We awaken to responsibility within our own consciousness. And in that responsibility, we do not expect anyone to recognize, to pay, or to praise us. See how profound this is? This is such an enlightened teaching, a teaching of the future. So when somebody says, look, I've already read Infinity, I've already read the 3 volumes of the Fire World, 1, 2, and 3, I've already read The Call. Okay, the only way I know you've read it is by your actions, by your leadership, by your day-to-day life. And by the fact that you do not expect anyone to recognize you, to pay you, or to praise you. We create our own field of labor under that sense of responsibility and work in that field, not counting the time and income involved, but enjoying the service we are rendering for others. The lion of the desert is one with the greatest sense of responsibility. So you can imagine why I said in the beginning what a gift it is to sit down for 3 hours, typically 3 hours, to put together a Sunday talk. Probably the most important 3 hours of every week. Helena Rourke wrote about the inevitability of the new era. She wrote, "We are now at the very entrance to a new era, a new race, and therefore our time may be compared with the times of Atlantis, the existence of which becomes more and more evident to our science." She also wrote, "Watch out for all unusual and destructive signs in all spheres of life, and then many things will become clearer to you. You will see where the sparks of the new era are, the sparks of spiritual knowledge and great cooperation of people. Realization of the coming of this great time should multiply the strength of every sensitive person and should direct them toward joyous, constructive work." So we can ask ourselves, am I a spark in the new era? Helena Rourke wrote, "You will see where the sparks of the new era are, the era of spiritual knowledge and the great cooperation of people. Are we a spark of the new era? Some of us have spent many years in meditation, many years of study, many years of service in response to the light and love of the higher self. But are we a spark in the new era? Are we a conscious disciple, an inspired disciple, a humble disciple? The point is to look at your life, your spiritual life, and ask yourself, are you a spark of the new era? Are you transforming the consciousness of the people around you, your group, your community? Are they now ready to gain entrance into the new era? If yes, then good for you. If not, now's the time to get going. Right now. But you must be prepared. For example, are you ready to come under the attack of the forces of darkness? Think of Mahatma Gandhi. And then think of where you live, the culture you live in, the country that you live in. And if you are a spark of the new era, you've got some work to do. And are you ready to come under the attack of the forces of darkness? As a spark of the new era, a warrior of the new era, we must be prepared for potential attacks. Helena Rourke wrote a note when she was living in Kalimpong, India, at the Kirkedy House, saying, "Every undertaking of light is subject to attacks by those who extinguish the light, subject to attacks by those who extinguish the light. But nothing can suffocate the progress of the ideas of light and the building for the general good. The attackers should be viewed as a stimuli for our energy, which could otherwise come to a standstill." What does undertaking of light mean? It means for us individually that we are working on ourselves in order to prepare ourselves. I'm sorry. It's so still in here. It's very weird. The energy is very weird. I'm sorry to have to interrupt the talk with that, but it is. Not that it's why I can't speak, but it's a different energy. So undertaking of light, what does this mean? It means that we are working on ourselves in order to prepare ourselves to be a warrior of light, a warrior of spirit. It means that we are going to put ourselves on the path of initiation. It means that we are going to work for the reappearance of the Christ and the externalization of the hierarchy. So why is every undertaking of light subject to attacks by the dark forces? Light is about future. It is about evolution. It is about creativity and contact with the supermundane. It is about progress and infinity. It is about immortality and the true self. Every warrior of spirit that engages in activities inspired by hierarchy becomes a threat to the dark forces. It is important that our light shines out, the light that is the divine presence within us, the light that we are in our essence. This light must shine out, cleansing all that is not in harmony with that divine, pure light that is within us, within our family and group, within our country and world. The light must cleanse our illusions. See how the lion of the desert is working? That light must clean our illusions and mental hindrances, glamours and emotional crystallizations, inertia and etheric short circuits. Once you take an action which reflects the light of hierarchy of the true self, you may see some changes in your environment. Gradually, the expanding light will pave the way to help you achieve the continuity of consciousness. Once you achieve continuity of consciousness, it is then you become a world disciple. Continuity of consciousness is equal to being a world disciple. We must prepare ourselves to travel on the path of the spiritual warrior, which means to display, and now I'm going to quote, 4 stones. To display 4 stones. Can you give her a cough drop? She has one. It's not working. 4 cornerstones, 4 stones. This is right out of Agni Yoga. Leaves of Mooria's garden. He says, the master says, place these 4 stones into the foundation of your actions. First, the first stone to place in your foundation is the reverence of hierarchy. Second is the realization of unity. That's the second stone. The third stone is the realization of co-measurement. And the 4th stone is application of the canon by thy God. Those are the 4 stones. Reverence of hierarchy, realization of unity, realization of co-measurement, and by thy God. The master goes on to explain the 4 stones by saying, to establish the first stone, call forth all your love. Reverence for hierarchy. Think back to your childhood and recall the best smiles, the brightest rays of the sun, and the first song of the birds outside your window. For the second stone, unity, gird yourselves with the weapons of the day. Put on the armor of your actions and refresh your receptivity with a mouthful of sobering water. It's very poetic, and it's very significant. For the third stone, co-measurement, select the longest vertical line in your workroom and make it the scale for measuring the plan. Mentally measure every discontent, irritation, and fatigue on the scale of the world plan. And in making this comparison, you will find that there is not even the smallest place for illusory moods. For the 4th stone, by thy God, picture to yourself the boundless nature of the starry world. Truly, the Father has many abodes. Which of them shall we denigrate? Recalling the rule you have been given, imagine that you are coming out of a closed house into the light. In this way, everything that you need will come to you. Upon the first stone, inscribe a dove. On the second, a warrior. Upon the third, a pillar. And on the fourth, the sun. The forces of darkness are about the past. The forces of darkness work against beauty, against goodness, against synthesis and unity, against balance and equilibrium. The forces of darkness are about separation and involution and enslavement, about imposition, fear, and revenge. Christ said, "The children of darkness are smarter than the children of light." The dark forces do many things to spread darkness. For example, a person says that it is not possible to stop our teenagers from taking drugs, from drinking alcohol, from prostitution, and so forth. That person is really saying that the drug dealers and the bartenders and the prostitution and sex traffickers are smarter than our statesmen and police and armies and philosophers. Do you see, such people are about darkness? Why are we not as smart or more intelligent in the way we increase light? So sitting and learning these things does not help. Darkness is increasing, and it is going to capture the unaware. We must prevent crime, pollution, separatism, hatred, and malice. We must increase light. And who else is going to do it if we do not? We must live an ethical life, a life of virtue, a life of daring, courage, determination, insight, and foresight, of light, of right and healthy relations. We must build the higher mind and intuition. We must be ready and prepared to journey the path of the spiritual warrior. So let me close with this thought. The Agni Yogi, lion of the desert, bears in his heart all human expressions of grief. He bears all explosions of cosmos and senses all shiftings of consciousness. He bears all the streamings of cosmic currents. He possesses that synthesizing knowledge which attests the gathering of manifested spirits for the regenerating of consciousness. The lion of the desert has a synthesis of spirit. When a synthesis of spirit is built from the cosmic fires and the life of the open heart, then humanity can be told that the centers of cosmic fires show analogy to the centers of cosmos. That this parallel relationship, as above, so below, can grant a better life. When the synthesis of spirit is built, it is then that the principle of creativeness is established as infinite fire, as infinite vision, as infinite hearing, as the all-containing heart. strive toward the authentication of the fire of infinity, the succession of all gates which leads to new spheres, which we call infinity. Infinity symbolizes the boundlessness and great mystery of all creation, to which we are linked by the master and hierarchy. Thus, even if we do not understand the meanings of infinity, we are able to realize it is something unavoidable and therefore needing special attention. This is the path of the Agni Yogi, the lion of the desert. A lot to absorb, assimilate, and please think about it. There's so much in the talk this morning.